People enjoy sailing on the beautiful oceans, seas, and lakes while relaxing and listening to blissful waves. Some sail for pleasure while others work in a variety of jobs. One thing is common though: the oceans, seas, and Great Lakes are all capable of taking ships down in a matter of minutes. Today, we'll be exploring stories of some of the most infamous maritime disasters. 6. The Mary Celeste. The Mary Celeste was a boat that left New York City on November 7, 1872. Benjamin Spooner Briggs, the captain, was on board with his wife and their 2-year-old daughter. There were also 7 men on the crew. They had plans to sail to Italy. The ship's cargo was filled with 1,700 barrels of industrial alcohol. What happened next has led to a mystery that's puzzled experts for over 150 years. British ship De Gracia spotted the Mary Celeste drifting alone in the Atlantic. The Celeste was discovered 400 miles off the coast of the Azores, an island chain in the Atlantic not far from Portugal. The crew of the De Gracia was stunned when they saw the ship. It had taken off 8 days before. The crew of the De Gracia was curious, so they decided to board the Mary Celeste. They were shocked by what they found. Not one person was on board the Mary Celeste, and the lifeboat was gone. Also, the ship had about 6 months' worth of food and water on it, which was plenty for the intended voyage. The cargo was left untouched. Down below, the ship did have a flooding issue where 3 feet of water was on the floor. That was not a dire situation though, and the crew could have simply repaired the leak responsible for the water coming inside. The De Gracia's crew found the last log entry by Captain Benjamin Spooner Briggs. The date was marked November 25th. The crew of the De Gracia decided to take the abandoned ship to Gibraltar, a British territory in Spain right at the entrance of the Mediterranean Sea. The Mary Celeste was then examined by the British Vice Admiralty Court. The reason they brought the ship to Gibraltar was for salvage purposes. By doing so, the crew was entitled to the insurance money on the Mary Celeste. At the time, the insurance payout was roughly $46,000. The British officers in Gibraltar were immediately suspicious of the De Gracia's crew. Were they trying to pull off a scam? Did they do something to Captain Benjamin Spooner Briggs, his family, and the crew of the Mary Celeste? A 3-month investigation yielded no evidence of foul play. The insurance company, however, decided not to pay the $46,000 to the crew of the De Gracia, just a small fraction. During the early 2000s, Anne McGregor and an oceanographer named Phil Richardson decided to investigate the strange fate of the Mary Celeste. She told Smithsonian Magazine in 2007, "There's so much nonsense written about this legend," she said. "I felt compelled to find the truth." What she found was both fascinating and baffling. She uncovered no evidence of a mutiny or an attack by pirates. If there was a mutiny, the ship would have been in even worse condition. It was by no means in danger due to the flooding. The captain and crew were very experienced, and abandoning ship was the last thing they would do in the Atlantic. McGregor and Richardson's research led them to think there may have had to have been some equipment issues with the Mary Celeste. First, it's believed that the chronometer, an important piece of navigation equipment, was faulty. It had them drifting 120 miles west in the wrong direction. Also, the flooding in the ship was more than likely caused by faulty ship pumps. They were found disassembled, leading McGregor and Richardson to think that Benjamin Spooner Briggs was worried about the flooding and wasn't sure if it would get worse. But the truth on the fate of the Mary Celeste remains a mystery. Benjamin Spooner Briggs, his wife, his daughter, and the crew were never found either. 5. The MS Explorer. It was November 2007 when the MS Explorer, a cruise ship from Liberia, was on a 19-day voyage across the Falkland Islands and Antarctica. Passengers would have been able to see whales and penguins had the trip gone smoothly. Unfortunately, the MS Explorer struck ice near the South Shetland Islands located not far from the coast of Antarctica. There were 154 people on board at the time. Luckily, they all safely made their way to lifeboats, where they spent hours in the water, openly exposed to freezing temperatures while waiting for help. It finally arrived when a Norwegian cruise ship spotted them from a distance. From there, the passengers were then taken to a Chilean military base. A spokesperson for the cruise ship company responsible said the boat did actually hit some ice, but suffered a small amount of damage, only the size of a human fist. Still, officials from Argentina examined the damage and claimed it was more significant than what the cruise company claimed. The MS Explorer marks the first cruise ship to sink near the Antarctic continent. 4. RMS Titanic. This has to be the most famous cruise ship wreck in history. The RMS Titanic was a British ship that was built for $7.5 million. Construction started in 1909 in Ireland, and the Titanic was branded as unsinkable thanks to its design. The ship was built for transatlantic crossings, and the business was booming during the early 20th century. The Titanic was 882 feet in length and boasted 4 iconic smokestacks. About 100,000 people watched the launching of this majestic ship. On April 10, 1912, the Titanic set sail from Southampton, England, and headed to New York City. There were an estimated 2,200 passengers and crew members on board. It was April 14, 1912, when an iceberg was spotted at about 11:40 p.m. It was part of a 4-mile-wide ice field. Nearby ships messaged each other about the dangers. While this was communicated to the Titanic, the ship still didn't slow down. It's believed that the ship's crew was under pressure to get the Titanic from Southampton to New York City on time to set a record. When the Titanic spotted the iceberg, it was already on a speedy collision course, traveling at 22 knots or 25 miles per hour. Despite efforts to avoid a crash, the Titanic grazed the iceberg. Portions of the iceberg underwater gashed open the side of the ship and created a 300-foot slash. Water was rushing in fast, and the ship was in serious trouble. An evacuation order was made, and the lifeboats were prepared to be loaded. This was by no means a simple procedure. It was remembered as incredibly chaotic. But there was a major problem. There were not enough lifeboats to accommodate all of the passengers. There were 3,300 on the ship, and the lifeboats could only hold 1,200 people. Also, when the lifeboats did get filled, they were not filled to their full capacity. It took less than 3 hours for the ship to fully sink. In the end, 1,490 to 1,635 people were killed. About 750 people survived the terrifying ordeal. Do you know any interesting facts about the Titanic sinking? Let us know in the comments below and subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying the video so far. 3. RMS Lusitania. The RMS Lusitania was a British ocean liner that was launched in 1906. It was one of the largest ships in the world at 787 feet in length. Not only was it the largest ship on the seas, but it was also one of the fastest. The Lusitania usually made trips between Liverpool, England, and New York City. It was May 1915 when the Lusitania left New York City for Liverpool. But this was not the safest time for ocean liners. Europe was deep in war. Germany and its allies were fighting with England, France, and Russia. The United States claimed to be neutral, but it was secretly sending supplies to England using ocean liners. The Germans knew about this and decided to take action. They had their U-boats patrolling parts of the North Atlantic, and they declared waters around Britain a war zone. 3 months earlier, the Germans said they would conduct unrestricted submarine warfare in this area. Any ship sailing there was fair game for attacks. The German embassy put articles in American newspapers warning people that if they were sailing to Britain on a ship displaying the British flag, they would be at risk. About 1,959 people were on the Lusitania when it set sail that May. But that wasn't everything on the ship. The Lusitania held military supplies from the US for Britain and their allies to use. This included rifle ammo and shells. There was about 173 tons in total. The captain of the Lusitania, William Thomas Turner, was ordered to avoid the waters that separated Ireland from Britain. It was also requested that he zigzag the Lusitania so U-boats couldn't track his boat. Turner went ahead and sailed into the waters anyway in a normal pattern despite the warnings. A German U-boat quickly spotted the Lusitania off the coast of Ireland on May 7, 1915. A torpedo was fired, damaging one side of the ship. The torpedo explosion caused a second explosion from the steam engines and made things even worse. The Lusitania sank within 20 minutes. It claimed the lives of 1,198 people. Of those who passed away, 128 were Americans. Many in the US were outraged by this disaster. It would be another 2 years before the United States officially entered World War I, but unrestricted submarine warfare has been mentioned as one of the factors that drove them to war. 2. The Edmund Fitzgerald. One of the most infamous shipwrecks in Great Lakes history was the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald on November 10, 1975. 29 men went down into the frigid and unforgiving waters of Lake Superior that day. The incident happened northwest of Whitefish Point, Michigan, during a terrible storm. The ship was commissioned by the Northwestern Mutual Life Insurance Company and was named after Edmund Fitzgerald, Northwestern Mutual Life's president. The boat cost $8 million to build and was launched in June 1958. The Fitzgerald measured 729 feet and was the largest ship on the Great Lakes during that time. Things didn't exactly go well at its launch. The boat rolled violently when it first hit the water. Spectators were almost hit by a giant wave, and a man even suffered a heart attack and died. The final mission of the Fitzgerald took place on November 9, 1975, when it was scheduled to haul iron ore from Wisconsin to Zug Island near Detroit. While on its trip to Detroit, weather conditions on Lake Superior deteriorated fast. Gale warnings were issued, and the weather turned into a scary situation for the crew. Hurricane-force winds up to 90 miles per hour, with waves reported to be 35 feet, slammed into the Edmund Fitzgerald. Another ship on Lake Superior, the Arthur M. Anderson, stayed in touch with the Fitzgerald during the storm, but lost contact around 7:10 p.m. A search of the lake yielded 2 lifeboats from the Fitzgerald, but no one inside them. Some debris was also found, leaving rescuers with a puzzling mystery. Sadly, the Fitzgerald was taken by Lake Superior and sank 535 feet. A US Navy vessel was sent to the area to investigate the wreckage in May 1976 and was able to get a few video and images of the sunken ship. 1. Costa Concordia. The Costa Concordia was an Italian cruise ship that faced disaster on January 13, 2012, near Giglio Island between Italy and Corsica. The Concordia was Italy's largest cruise ship when it launched in 2005 and measured 951 feet. It was known for its luxurious amenities, and it could hold about 2,400 passengers. But when it sailed in January 2012, there were over 3,000 passengers on board, not including 1,023 crew members. The captain made a fateful decision. The ship deviated from its normal route and sailed a tad too close to Giglio Island. The plan was to salute the island and blow the ship's horn. The captain of the ship was Italian, and there were a few crew members from Indonesia. At some point, likely due to a language barrier, there was a command that was mistaken and the Costa Concordia hit a reef. The mistake created a massive hole in the ship, measuring 174 feet wide. Water rushed into the hull, and it did extensive damage. The engine room was flooded, the ship lost power, and there was no way to steer. The Costa Concordia tilted to one side, and it quickly took on too much water. Things looked dire for the crew and passengers. One of the passengers made a call to some family, saying that the ship was in trouble. The Italian Coast Guard then called the Costa Concordia and asked if they needed assistance. The captain apparently downplayed the situation. 10 minutes later, he radioed the Coast Guard back and admitted that things looked bad. What happened next is a bit sketchy. The Italian Coast Guard's contact with the captain happened around 10:15 p.m. The first rescue ship arrived at 10:40 p.m. and at 11:20 p.m. the captain apparently abandoned the ship. The rescue operation was difficult. The ship was leaning badly to one side, and passengers had to be evacuated using ladders. Those leading the rescue learned the captain was not even on board the ship. They were able to get a hold of him on a lifeboat. The orders were for the captain to return to the Costa Concordia, but he refused. Those involved in the rescue saved over 4,000 people. 32 people died in this disaster, and one person's body was never found. The incident made its way to court in July 2013, where crew members and the ship's crisis coordinator were charged with several crimes including manslaughter. All were sentenced to less than 3 years. The captain had a separate trial, which lasted almost 2 years. He was eventually convicted of various charges, including manslaughter, and given a greater sentence of 16 years in prison. 6. SS Sultana Disaster. The SS Sultana Disaster stands out as one of the most tragic maritime events in US history. On April 27, 1865, during the closing of the American Civil War, the steamship Sultana was carrying about 2,300 passengers. Most of them were Union soldiers that had recently been released from Confederate prison camps. The ship was only designed for a maximum capacity of 376 passengers, so it was heavily overcrowded, primarily because of the desperate demand for transportation after the war. At around 2 a.m., the Sultana was sailing along the Mississippi River, about 7 miles north of Memphis, when its boilers suddenly suffered a catastrophic explosion, sending shockwaves through the crowded ship. The boiler ruptured in a horrifying sequence. First, one exploded, then 2 more in rapid succession. The explosion was cataclysmic. The top rear of the boilers unleashed a colossal eruption of hot steam, tearing through the decks above and wiping out the pilot house, rendering the ship completely uncontrollable. The resulting chaos led to passengers getting thrown into the river, a gaping 30-foot hole getting torn in the steamer's side, and the twin smokestacks collapsing in several directions. The forward section of the upper deck also fell onto the middle deck, leaving many passengers trapped in the wreckage. Rescue efforts were launched with the arrival of the southbound steamer Bostona about a half hour after the initial explosion. Dozens of survivors floated downstream, calling out for help. Most were rescued by docked steamboats and US warships. The Sultana, now a burning hulk, drifted 6 miles to the west bank of the river and eventually sank near Mound City, Arkansas, about 5 hours after the explosion. The ordeal was a test of survival, with many passengers facing freezing waters, hypothermia, and the excruciating decision of either escaping the ship's fiery inferno or enduring its flames. Survivors faced a grim choice after the explosion: plunge into the ice-cold Mississippi waters or perish in the ship's heat. Tragically, many drowned. Some fortunate souls were rescued from half-submerged trees along the Arkansas shoreline. In the end, the exact death toll is uncertain, but the most recent evidence suggests that approximately 1,167 individuals lost their lives that night, many of them being Civil War veterans who were recently released from prison camps. 5. Estonia Ferry Disaster. On September 28, 1994, the world was reminded of the unpredictable and deadly nature of the sea as the MS Estonia, a passenger ferry, became one of the worst maritime disasters in European history. The MS Estonia was a well-known ship that operated mainly between Tallinn, Estonia, and Stockholm, Sweden. It was a reliable mode of transportation, connecting the countries and facilitating both trade and tourism. That night, the ship was carrying 989 people, both passengers and crew members. The disaster was precipitated by a combination of factors: bad weather, poor design choices, and inadequate safety measures. The vessel, on its way to Stockholm, met a severe storm, with winds reaching hurricane force and waves towering 15 meters in height. The Estonia wasn't built to handle such extreme conditions. The ship's bow visor, a crucial component of the design, detached because of the violent waves. This structural failure let water flood the car deck, destabilizing the vessel entirely. Within minutes, the MS Estonia tilted dangerously, and passengers and crewmates had to confront a terrifying ordeal. The ferry sent out distress signals, but the severe weather hindered rescue efforts. As the ship tilted further, lifeboats became inaccessible. With the vessel sinking, passengers were left with few options. Some were able to find life jackets and life rafts, but many were trapped below deck or plunged into the Baltic's frigid waters. The tragedy unfolded fast, and by the time the rescue operation could be fully mobilized, it was too late for many. Out of the 989 people on board, only 138 lived. A staggering 852 lives were lost, making the MS Estonia disaster one of the deadliest peacetime maritime tragedies in Europe's waters. 4. Collision of the SS Andreadora and the MS Stockholm. On July 25, 1956, the SS Andreadora, a luxury Italian liner, was on its way to New York City, carrying over 1,700 passengers and crew members, while the MS Stockholm, a Swedish passenger ship, was heading back to Europe with 500 people on board. Both ships were navigating through a dense fog, a common situation in the North Atlantic. Tragically, the combination of reduced visibility and human navigational errors led to a devastating collision. The night started off with the Stockholm following her typical homeward course, setting her on a collision course with the Andreadora. This course, chosen to save time and cut corners, was a violation of the 1953 North Atlantic Track Agreement, to which the Swedish-American line, owner of the Stockholm, had signed. The waters of the North Atlantic off Nantucket Island are often littered with fog thanks to the interaction of the cold Labrador Current and the Gulf Stream. As the two ships approached each other at a combined speed of 40 knots, heavy fog surrounded the Andreadora, limiting visibility. The critical moments leading up to the crash were marked by a series of navigation errors. In the midst of thick fog, the Andreadora and the Stockholm relied entirely on radar for tracking each other. Misinterpretation of each other's course doubled with confusion and no initial radio communication. The tragedy unfolded as the Andreadora gradually steered south to try and pass starboard to starboard, while the Stockholm turned southward for a port-to-port passing. This navigational error placed the ships on a collision course. As the fog cleared and the ships realized they were about to crash, they executed last-minute evasive maneuvers, but couldn't avoid the impending disaster. The collision took place at almost a 90-degree angle, with the Stockholm's bow piercing through the starboard side of the Andreadora. This punctured the hull, penetrating almost 40 feet deep and tearing open fuel tanks. The ship's design had watertight compartments, but a severe tilt, made worse by a lack of ballast in fuel tanks, exceeded its stability limits. Rescue operations followed immediately. The call for help was sent out to nearby vessels, including the United States Coast Guard, who helped coordinate efforts. Ships like the Ile-de-France, Cape Ann, and the USNS Private William H. answered the call. Remarkably, 1,663 passengers and crew were rescued from the Andreadora, while the damaged Stockholm took 545 survivors. In all, 51 lives were lost in the collision and sinking, 46 passengers from the Andreadora and 5 members of the Stockholm's crew. After the evacuation of survivors was completed, Captain Calamai of the Andreadora considered the possibility of towing the ship to more shallow water, but quickly realized its fate was sealed. After the transfer of all survivors onto rescue ships heading for New York, the Andreadora's remaining crew was compelled to abandon the vessel. The final sinking of the ship, starting at 9:45 a.m., culminated in the bow submerging at 10:09 a.m. on July 26, 1956, marking the end of the Andreadora's ill-fated journey. How do you think this disaster could have been avoided? Let us know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. 3. MV Lejula Sinking. The MV Lejula Sinking is a maritime disaster scarred into the pages of history as one of the deadliest ferry accidents on record. On September 26, 2002, this Senegalese government-owned ferry named MV Lejula left the port of Ziguinchor, Senegal, heading for Dakar, the capital of the country. The ship was designed to carry 550 passengers, but it was heavily overloaded on that particular journey, with an estimated 2,000 passengers on board. Tragedy hit when about 20 kilometers off the coast, the MV Lejula met rough seas and poor weather conditions. The ferry capsized and sank, leaving only a fraction of the passengers with life vests and lifeboats to latch onto. The lack of proper safety equipment combined with overcrowding proved disastrous. The exact death toll is still uncertain, but it's believed that between 1,800 and 2,000 people were killed, making it one of the deadliest nautical disasters in history. The catastrophe's scale and the government's handling of the rescue prompted international outrage and heavy criticism. Rescue operations were severely hampered by the absence of resources and proper coordination. It took hours for the Senegalese government to ask for assistance from other nations. By the time help got there, many of the passengers had already given way to the elements or drowned. Survivors had to endure the horrors of being left adrift in open waters with no help in sight. The MV Lejula disaster raised serious questions about ferry safety, overcrowding, and the importance of following established passenger limits and regulations. It also underscored the need for more efficient maritime emergency response systems. 2. The Dona Paz Collision. On the night of December 20, 1987, the Philippine passenger ferry MV Dona Paz was en route from Leyte to Manila when it struck the MT Vector, an oil tanker. The MV Dona Paz, operated by Sulpicio Lines, was a passenger ferry crammed full with an estimated 4,000 passengers on board. It was only designed to carry about 1,500. Overcrowding was fairly common in the Philippines, and many passengers were traveling home for the holiday season. The MT Vector, carrying thousands of barrels of gasoline and other petroleum products, was also going through the Tablas Strait. The collision took place in the darkest hours of the night, and both ships were operating without proper navigational equipment. The Dona Paz was not equipped with radar, and the Vector's radar was not functional during the time of the collision. Also, both ships lacked sufficient lifeboats and life jackets. The impact between the two resulted in a catastrophic fire on board the Dona Paz. The gasoline cargo on the Vector also ignited immediately, creating an inferno that engulfed the ferry within mere moments. Passengers on the Dona Paz faced an awful choice: jump into the burning sea or remain on the sinking ship. Many chose the latter, hoping to be rescued. Unfortunately, that hope didn't last long. Rescue operations were made difficult by the remoteness of the collision site and the absence of any nearby vessels. Hours passed before any help arrived, and by that time the Dona Paz had already sunk into the water. The few survivors who managed to escape faced a treacherous sea filled with burning oil. The official death toll from the Dona Paz Collision stands at 1,565, but the actual number of casualties is believed to be higher, possibly over 4,000, considering the overcrowding and the lack of a passenger list. It is one of the deadliest peacetime maritime disasters in history. In the aftermath, the Philippine government implemented several measures to improve maritime safety, like requiring passenger lists, enforcing more strict vessel inspections, and imposing penalties for non-compliance with safety regulations. The Dona Paz Collision led to a positive shift in the country's approach to maritime safety. 1. Sinking of the Vilhelm Gustloff. The sinking of the Vilhelm Gustloff in 1945 stands firmly as the most tragic and devastating maritime disaster in history. This German transport ship, loaded with thousands of refugees and military personnel, was hit by a Soviet submarine's torpedo in the closing days of World War II, resulting in an estimated loss of 9,400 lives. As World War II was coming to an end in early 1945, the German military and civilian authorities launched the evacuation of East Prussia, which was encircled by Soviet forces. The Vilhelm Gustloff, originally built as a cruise ship and later converted into a military transport vessel, became a crucial part of Operation Hannibal, the mass evacuation of German civilians and military personnel from the Eastern Front to the safety of Western Germany. On January 30, 1945, the Vilhelm evacuated refugees, including women, children, and elderly people, from the East Prussian port of Gdynia, now in Poland, to Kiel, Germany. The ship's capacity was exceeded, with an estimated 10,500 to 11,000 people on board, a majority being civilians. The Vilhelm set sail in the middle of a harsh winter storm and was accompanied by several smaller escort vessels. The ship's crew was not prepared for a disaster of this magnitude, and many passengers were crammed into overcrowded, unheated quarters below deck. Most of the passengers had endured years of war and hardship, and their hopes for a better future rested specifically on this voyage. Meanwhile, lurking under the surface of the Baltic Sea was the Soviet submarine S-13, under the command of Captain Alexander Marinesco. The submarine had already achieved infamy, having sunk the German transport ship General von Steuben a few weeks earlier, causing over 3,500 casualties. On the night of January 30th, 1945, as the Vilhelm was on its way, Captain Marinesco saw the ship on the horizon. The Soviet submarine then launched a spread of torpedoes, and at least 3 of them met their mark, striking the Vilhelm. The torpedoes caused catastrophic damage, and within minutes, the ship started to tilt heavily to one side. The situation on board spiraled into chaos. The ship's crew struggled to launch lifeboats, but the icy waters of the Baltic Sea and the severe winter conditions proved deadly. The Vilhelm sank fast, and within 45 minutes of the torpedo strikes, the ship was gone for good, taking with it thousands of people. Rescue efforts were difficult thanks to frigid temperatures, but several smaller escort vessels managed to save around 1,200 survivors from the icy waters. The exact number of casualties remains a subject of debate because of the sheer scale of the disaster and limited documentation. Estimates suggest that 1,200 to 1,500 passengers and crew members survived, while 7,000 to 9,000 people died in the sinking. The exact figure may not ever be known, considering the chaotic circumstances and the destruction of records during the war. The sinking of the Vilhelm Gustloff represents a massive loss of life, with more casualties than the sinking of the Titanic and the Lusitania combined. But the disaster has received little attention compared to other maritime tragedies. Part of this may be attributed to the wartime context, with both Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union reluctant to talk publicly about the event. In exploring some of the worst maritime disasters in history, we're reminded of the profound human cost and the lessons that should be learned from these tragedies.
Number 8. Impossible Rogue Wave. In 1978, the MS München, a formidable ship with a crew of 27 and a steel cargo, disappeared mysteriously. And the enigma surrounding its vanishing has since become quite a subject of debate. The MS München was a pride of the merchant navy fleet, boasting unsinkable status. This robust vessel, measuring 857 feet in length, was believed to withstand any turbulent sea conditions. Yet, on December 7, 1978, while en route from Bremerhaven, Germany to Savannah, Georgia, it vanished from the face of the earth. In the lead-up to its disappearance, the ship's crew had sent out a distress call, indicating that the sea conditions were treacherous. But despite an extensive search effort, no trace of the München was found, at least not initially. However, 2 months later, a breakthrough occurred when the ship's starboard lifeboat was discovered. What was truly perplexing about this find was the condition the lifeboat was found in. The pins securing it to the vessel, situated a staggering 60 feet above the waterline, were twisted in a manner that strongly suggested a colossal wave had struck it. However, a wave would have had to have been at least 70 feet in height, a scale of a wave that defied belief for both scientists and shipbuilders. It exceeded any wave ever recorded and was considered impossible. Mysteries of the Missing, hosted by Terry O'Quinn, ventures into this intriguing case, drawing insights from top experts and scrutinizing the evidence provided by the discovered lifeboat. The fundamental question remains: could this massive cargo ship have fallen victim to an unprecedented wall of water so immense and abrupt that the crew had minimal opportunity to issue a distress call? The MS München's vanishing act continues to perplex and captivate, challenging conventional wisdom and adding yet another layer to the maritime lore of the unexplainable. Number 7. The USS Cyclops. In 1918, the USS Cyclops, a Proteus-class collier designed for coal transport, set sail under mysterious circumstances. Built by the William Cramp & Sons Ship and Engine Building Company in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, it was an unusual choice to carry manganese ore instead of coal, a far denser cargo. The ominous journey of the Cyclops began on February 16, 1918, as it left Rio de Janeiro bound for Salvador, Brazil. Troubles began from the very beginning, as reports suggested the ship was overloaded and had a cracked cylinder. Despite recommendations to return to the United States for repairs, though, it continued on its journey. Just 4 days later, the Cyclops, still overloaded, made an unscheduled stop in Barbados before supposedly heading straight to Baltimore, Maryland, with no planned stops. However, it never reached its destination. Inexplicably, the USS Cyclops vanished without a trace, leaving no wreckage or debris behind. And what's even more perplexing is that no distress signals were ever received via wireless communications along the ship's route. A few years later, a magazine published a story describing the ship's enigmatic disappearance as if a colossal sea monster had swallowed it whole, crew and all. Numerous theories have emerged to explain the ship's fate, ranging from a German Navy attack near St. Kitts to a catastrophic listing caused by soaked cargo turning into a slurry. Other speculations include a massive explosion preventing an SOS call, or the notorious Bermuda Triangle playing a role. But despite a massive investigation by the Navy, the fate of the USS Cyclops remains a baffling mystery. Adding to the intrigue, both of the Cyclops' sister ships, the USS Nereus and the USS Proteus, also disappeared with all hands on deck, lost in the Atlantic. And at the time of its disappearance, the USS Nereus was on the same route as the ill-fated Cyclops. The mystery of the Cyclops still intrigues people today, leaving us a lasting maritime legend marked by obscure riddles and an unsettling aura of the unknown. Number 6. The Titanic of the South. In the torrid waters of July 1909, the SS Waratah, a luxury steamer of Scottish origin, embarked on an ill-fated voyage from Cape Town to Durban, South Africa. Designed as a passenger and cargo liner to Australia, It had just returned from its second trip down under. And with 211 souls on board, the Waratah set sail from Durban, bound for Cape Town, where it should have docked by July 29th. Yet, destiny had a different plan for this lavish vessel. The SSS Waratah vanished without a trace, leaving no evidence of its grandeur behind. The mystery only deepened as the years passed, and sporadic sightings of ship-shaped wreckage along South Africa's coast between 1925 and 1999 failed to reveal the ship's true resting place. None of these fragments could be conclusively linked to the enigmatic Waratah. Numerous theories have arisen to explain the ship's disappearance, but one in particular captured the collective imagination. On the 100th anniversary of the ship's vanishing in 2009, it was suggested that a colossal wave might have capsized the vessel, leading to a catastrophic malfunction of its rudder. Sonar imaging lent some credence to this theory, yet the riddle of the SS Waratah endures. The tale of the SS Waratah is one of maritime intrigue, a luxurious ship swallowed by the ocean's depths, leaving behind a legacy of uncertainty and bewilderment. And despite the passage of time and advances in technology, the secret of this lost luxury liner remains an enigma, defying the persistent efforts of those who seek to uncover its final fate. Number 5. The Ghost Ship of the Arctic. The SS Bechimo is a vessel shrouded in mystery and folklore. This ship, known as the Alaska Ghost Ship, continues to mystify as it sails the Arctic, defying all odds and eluding captors. The tale of the SS Bechimo is a story of relentless resilience. Originally launched as the SS Angermanelfen, in 1914 in Sweden, she traversed the Baltic bearing goods between Hamburg and Sweden throughout World War I. And as part of German reparations under the Treaty of Versailles, she was transferred to the United Kingdom, where she was renamed the SS Bechimo in 1921 after being sold to the Hudson's Bay Company. The Bechimo's real adventure began in the Arctic, specifically the Western Arctic, where she transported a curious assortment of cargo, from pelts to weapons, tobacco, sugar, and tea. But her fate took an eerie twist in October of 1931, when, while laden with furs en route to Vancouver, she became ensnared not once, but twice in pack ice. After a brief stop in the town of Barrow, the Bechimo faced its ultimate challenge. On October 8, 1931, trapped once more, the crew abandoned the ship with plans to return when the ice thawed in the summer. Some stayed nearby, braving harsh conditions to keep an eye on the ship. But on November 24th, a tempestuous storm ripped her from their grasp, carrying her 45 miles away. A week later, the crew miraculously spotted her, but this time, she was deemed unsalvageable. Abandoned for the final time, the Bechimo began her remarkable journey as a ghost ship. Over the years, reports of sightings continue to tantalize the imagination. Witnesses glimpsed her like Leslie Melvin in 1932, and several daring attempts were made to board and salvage the ship. She was successfully boarded on multiple occasions, but each time, she slipped through their fingers. The last documented sighting of the SS Bechimo was in 1969. Once again, trapped in ice, but she vanished without a trace. Her wreckage has never been found, adding yet another layer to the mysterious ship and its story. While it's widely accepted that the SS Bechimo likely sank after years adrift, her story serves as a testament to resilience and defiance. The Alaskan government has expressed a desire to locate the elusive Alaska Ghost Ship, but to this day the SS Bechimo remains just beyond our grasp. She is a symbol of the enduring mysteries that the world's oceans hold, an entity that refuses to be underestimated. If you located a ship that was drifting aimlessly in the ocean with no crew or captain aboard, would you claim that ship for yourself? Or would you report the abandoned vessel to the authorities? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, subscribe to the channel. Number 4. Witchcraft. On a fateful night in December 1967, a bizarre and perplexing maritime incident unfolded in the waters off Miami, leaving a trail of questions that persist to this day. The story revolves around Daniel S. Burak, the owner of a 23-foot cabin cruiser named Witchcraft, and his ill-fated voyage. Around 9 p.m. on December 22nd, Burak made a distress call to the Miami Coast Guard, reporting a collision near buoy number 7 at the outlet of Government Cut, a man-made shipping channel between Fisher Island and Miami Beach. He assured them that he and his passenger were unharmed, but in need of a tow to shore, signaling their position with a flare. In just 19 minutes, assistance arrived at the location, only to discover an eerie absence. There was no Witchcraft, no Daniel Burak, and no communication whatsoever. The boat had simply vanished into thin air. The swiftness of the response by the Coast Guard raised suspicions, suggesting familiarity with Burak's situation. On that particular night, with Christmas light tours attracting a flotilla of boats, Burak's disappearance remained all the more perplexing. Search efforts extended for over a week, employing air and sea resources, but no trace of Burak or his passenger, Father Padraig Horgan, was ever uncovered. Their mysterious vanishing had led some to cite the Bermuda Triangle as a possible culprit. However, intriguing questions surround this disappearance. Buoy number 7, where Burak reported the collision, was located near the outlet of Government Cut, a mere 900 feet from Miami Beach. This prompts the question, why would Burak venture into the treacherous Atlantic Ocean when he could have enjoyed the Christmas lights from the safety of Miami's shores? Some speculate that it might have been a ruse, casting doubt on whether Burak was truly at Government Cut. The situation becomes even more mysterious when considering Burak's ties to the wealthy and a crime wave in Miami at the time, including a robbery at a neighbor's waterfront home. To add to the intrigue, in 1963, Burak's Galen Hall Hotel mysteriously burned down, leading him to sell his properties and seek employment in Miami. The enigma of Daniel Burak's vanishing remains a tantalizing puzzle in the records of maritime and Miami's history. The Bermuda Triangle is just one theory, but this story is full of shadowy elements that invite us to delve deeper into its mysterious depths, revealing a tale of uncertainty, intrigue, and unexplained circumstances. Number 3, the Intrepid. In October 1996, the ocean off Florida's coast became the backdrop for a baffling maritime disappearance. The distress call from the yacht Intrepid set the stage, with 16 people aboard urgently reporting their sinking vessel. Their intention was clear. They would employ a lifeboat until rescue arrived. But little did they know, this call would kickstart a mysterious saga. The Coast Guard swiftly mobilized, and their mission was to locate the Intrepid and its passengers who were caught in this predicament. However, despite exhaustive efforts and sea and air search covering 6,000 square miles of ocean, their quest bore no clues as to what became of the missing 16 individuals. 4 planes joined in the search, tirelessly scanning the waves and skies through the night and into the following day. But mysteriously, no trace of the Intrepid, its passengers, or the lifeboat was ever found. It was as if they vanished into thin air. Weather conditions, with tumultuous seas, relentless rain, and towering waves, only compounded the challenge faced by the Coast Guard. The fate of the Intrepid and its 16 souls remains a perplexing maritime mystery. And despite the extensive search efforts, no signs of wreckage or survivors ever emerged. The case, shrouded in intrigue, challenges our understanding of the sea's ability to keep its secrets hidden beneath its depths. The story of the vanished Intrepid endures as an eerie testament to the unfathomable mysteries of the ocean, leaving us with more questions than answers. Number 2, the USS Porpus. The USS Porpus, a brigantine, vanished without a trace, leaving a maritime mystery in its wake. Authorized by Congress in 1834 and launched in 1836, this vessel had its share of adventures, including coastal surveying and hunting pirates along the southern coast in the late 1830s. In 1838, the Porpus embarked on a grand expedition around the world under the command of Lieutenant Charles Wilkes. This voyage was no ordinary journey. It confirmed the existence of the Antarctic continent, charted extensive areas of the South Pacific, and circumnavigated the globe before returning to New York 4 years later. The Porpus's adventurous spirit continued in 1841 when it, alongside the USS Oregon, visited the French frigate shoals as part of the United States exploring expedition. However, it was in 1854 that the Porpus embarked on a voyage from which it would never return. Separating from the squadron between Formosa and China, the ship mysteriously disappeared, and its fate remains unknown to this day. It's presumed that the vessel sank in a fierce typhoon, taking its secrets into the depths of the sea. The USS Porpus remains an enigmatic maritime puzzle, a ship that ventured into the abyss only to vanish without a trace. It leaves us with lingering uncertainties, beckoning us to explore the depths of the sea, where untold mysteries lie hidden, just waiting to be unraveled. Number 1. The Patriot. The tale of Theodosia Burr Alston, daughter of American political figure Aaron Burr, weaves a tapestry of privilege and mystery. Her life, marked by privilege and education, took a somber turn in 1812 when she lost her only son to a fever, leaving her deeply grief-stricken. In search of solace, Theodosia embarked on a journey that would lead to one of history's timeless mysteries. On New Year's Eve in 1812, Theodosia set sail aboard the schooner Patriot in South Carolina, bound for a reunion with her father in New York. As the ship departed, hope filled the air, but what unfolded afterwards remains shrouded in obscurity. The Patriot, along with its crew and Theodosia, never reached its intended destination. It simply vanished without a trace. Over the years, a web of theories and legends has emerged, each attempting to unveil the fate of Theodosia. Some tales suggest that pirates attacked the ship, leading to Theodosia walking the dreaded plank. Others, however, propose a different narrative, where the Patriot unwittingly became entangled in the chaos of the War of 1812, sinking due to an accidental encounter with an enemy vessel. But perhaps the most whimsical account hails from a Karankawa chief, who claimed to have rescued a woman who washed ashore after a shipwreck. The woman, he asserted, gifted him a locket bearing the name Theodosia before she passed away. Yet, as the centuries have passed, the truth behind the fate of the Patriot and Theodosia Burr Alston remains elusive. The mystery lingers, a timeless riddle that defies resolution. In this maritime conundrum, the waters conceal secrets that even the passage of more than 2 centuries cannot reveal. Have you heard of any other particularly intriguing cases of ships that disappeared? And if so, what details or theories about its disappearance fascinated you the most? Let us know what you think in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.